Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and we have a special episode for you today. What makes today's episode so special? Today, we are at the farm, so I'm not in the studio. I just got back from a trip. I was a keynote speaker up in Atlanta, had an opportunity to speak to a bunch of great entrepreneurs and doctors and whatnot, and I'm going to talk about that conversation, what I talked with them in that keynote today here. We're going to have an incredible conversation about what's called standards. And this is real important, especially if you've been trying to make any changes in your life, or if you're just trying to break into that next level. It will all boil down to what we call standards. And we'll break that down in just a moment here. So keep doing your thing, keep sharing out, keep spreading love. Appreciate you sharing this with your friends and your family, whatnot, anyone that it can help out, anyone that can serve to essentially help them make their lives a little bit simpler. Anyways, all right, let's dive in. We're going to talk about standards today. I had the opportunity last week. I was on the road as a keynote speaker. And oftentimes when I'm a speaker, I have an agenda to some degree, I guess you'd call it, or something I want to speak about or inspire people about. And oftentimes when I'm doing this, it doesn't always go that way. And sometimes when I'm up there speaking, I have to be able to be dynamic on the spot and be able to kind of change course of direction and how I communicate and make sure that, what I'm doing there is going to be effective. And that, that's for all of us in life. We all have a way of communicating, yet there are certain times the same way we communicate to one person does not work for the next. And this particular audience, I noticed it was just a subtly different, not bad or good. It was a little bit different than some of my other audiences. So I had to level up my game and essentially have a conversation with them about standards when it comes to health. So I want to do that for you today, have a conversation about standards. And I tell you what, this is important. It inspires me every time I talk about it, every time I think about my own standards, and every time I think about what might be holding me back from that next level. And it always boils back down to what are my personal standards. So we have standards in everything, quite frankly, whether we think we do or don't. We have standards with our health, we have standards with our wealth and our relationships. And these standards, if you're wondering what they are, just look around. What you have is a result of your different standards. And this looks in different ways. So you literally have a standard of how clean you keep your car, how clean you keep your house, your kitchen, what your bedroom looks like. You have a standard. If you're not sure what it is, just go take a look at those different things and you'll see your standard. For me, I like clean cars, especially on the outside. I like my cars to be running fine. That's a standard I always have. I don't wait for the oils to get checked. I don't wait for things to break down before I take care of them. And that's my standard. Important as I go through this too, to know that my standards aren't necessarily good for you, or they're certainly not judgments upon what you do. We just each need to have standards and recognize that we have them. And if we want things to change, the beautiful thing is we just got to start changing the standards. And how do we know if we're changing standards? Because the actions look different. And I promise you this, in the beginning, it's going to feel uncomfortable. So if everything is smooth and easy, then you're probably not changing your standards, and you will continue to get exactly what you have when it comes to your wealth, your health, and your relationships. So let's dive in a little bit. Well, and because this is a Health Made Simple show, we'll keep this for the most part about health, but it really blankets all three of those: health, wealth, and relationships. So we'll start with our health. I'm going to break this down into three categories. So you have a standard when it comes to movement in your life. Let's just call that exercise. As do I. I have a standard right now at this point in my life, and this has changed over time, that I exercise 7 days a week. That's my standard. That means I'm going to move my body every single day, quite frankly, just so I can get up and do it again. So that is my standard. It took me a little time to get it there, but that has no excuses. And I'm sharing this part because this is important. That means not when friends are in town do I give up my standard. When I travel and I have to stay in a hotel, I don't give up my standards. If you give them up during those times, well, when your friends are in town or you're visiting family, they're not really your standards. They're kind of what you want to do, but you're not holding the line on them. And that is where, for many of us, the option of change really takes place. A little side note here. I am recording this outside, so if you do hear a little wind, I apologize. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. Hopefully it's pretty good. But now the wind is blowing a little bit, I'm thinking there might be a little noise there. Anyway, so start thinking about your standards right now that you have when it comes to exercise. Because if you want something to change, you have to get crystal clear on what it is that you want to change and then decide what is your standard from this point forward, which really means, which is kind of interesting, because really what it means is that all the excuses won't work. And some of us, our standard is to use excuses. Our standard is, well, I tried that, and well, I usually do a pretty good job, but when you go on vacation, or when friends are in town, or it's the holidays, and you hear yourself saying these things, and those become, quite frankly, your standards. And again, this is not out of judgment. This is just, hey, let's pay attention, because the beauty is, once you hold your standard as if nothing is allowed to break or inhibit it, not a friend, not a family member, not a date, not a schedule, nothing, you hold those, you will quickly see your standards, see the quality of your life in that category move. So with that being said, think about your standard when it comes to moving. Think about your standard when it comes to eating. Everything I just said applies. Do you want to eat pretty good? Do you want to lose some weight? Do you want to become stronger? Do you want all these things, yet you find too many things getting in the way? And the only reason that is because you haven't drawn the line to make your standard your primary focus, meaning you will do what it takes. At that point, for the most part, our standards have to let go of all of our excuses. We have to let go of old paradigms, maybe even old beliefs we have. I'd say a lot of the times is old patterns that maybe have been passed on to us for generations to generations. Maybe you learned a concept like, man, you got to work hard to get ahead. And over time, you realize, man, if I just keep working hard, I'm going to break my back, and I'm not really going to get ahead. Maybe you got to work smarter. When it comes to relationships, maybe you have a relationship. Oh, there's no good guys out there. I promise you, the ladies out there, there's a lot of good people out there. So figure out what your current standard is, and if you want something better in that category, just raise the bar. So when it comes to eating, think about it. And this is where it takes a little gut check, and this is where the discomfort has to set in. Do you eat for comfort? Do you eat because it's pleasurable for you? Is that your standard? I want something that's yummy. And again, there's nothing wrong with no matter what your standard is. It's really up to you to figure out, is this the direction you want to and you're trying to move into? So look at how you eat. Is it your standard that after a good meal, you give yourself permission to have a glass of wine, or after a hard day's work, it's your standard to have a cocktail at night, even though we know that alcohol is a poison for it? For us, is that the standard that you've set for yourself? And so I think sometimes, and this is why I love having this conversation. I love teaching this from stage. I love talking about it here on the podcast, because it makes me double check my stuff. Because we know this, that in order for things to change, it is we that must change. It is I that must change. And what does that boil down to? Setting your standards. And I'll tell you what, having written down standards, literally writing down what your standard is: exercise 7 days a week, I eat clean, I reduce my alcohol, I have no alcohol, I choose to hang out with people that are respectful to other people. There's another category right there. We have standards. Many of you have heard the conversation or the concept that you are really a reflection of the 5 people that you have or interact with the most in your life. And in many ways, that has to do with your health, wealth, and relationship. Rarely are you the only one that exercises, or you're the only one that has wealth. So you may have to kind of look around and do some inventory and say, well, are the standards of the other people that I hang around with the most, are those the standards that I want, that are going to help me get to the next level in my life? So if you hang around people that go to the bar every night, most likely you're going to kind of be lured into that. So, and again, there's no judgment here. I'll tell you an interesting one that is not uncommon, that I'm looking for business associates, business opportunities to meet many different people in many different ways, so we can continue to level up our own ability to generate wealth, et cetera, for my wife and I. Yet, at the same time, if I find that their personal standards are not high, and this is mine, this is for me, this doesn't have to be their personal standards on how they treat other people. If I see them treat a waiter or a waitress with disrespect, they're off my list immediately. And again, no judgment, but that's my standard, that we always must, whoever is going to be in my circle is going to treat other people really good. Hopefully you kind of have a standard similar to that. Anyway, so when it comes to our eating, think about your standard. Instead of, because sometimes we get too wrapped up in the wrong and rights and what you should or should not do. Just think about your standards, because that's the one that's going to make the biggest difference. It's your new standard that you continue to put good, clean, healthy food in your body, so you get to be the best version of yourself. So let's talk about our relationships as well. I just kind of hinted on it there. We have to create a standard as well as how you treat other people, because for the most part, it's a reflection of how you're going to be treated through this, this thing we call life. So allow yourself to give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of permission to kind of check in on your standard when it comes to communicating with the outside world, communicating with other human beings and other, any person that you cross paths with at any time in your life, whether it's a gas station or in a restaurant or in a business meeting. So our conversation here today about standards, I'm going to wrap it up kind of in this light here. What's nice about it and what's really simplistic about it is that if you look at what we have right now, what you have in your life with your health, your wealth, and your relationships, those are your standards. If you want those to change, if you'd like to be more wealthy, if you'd like to be a healthier human being at a proper weight, at a good function, you'd like to move more, you'd like to have more muscle on your body, your standards must change, which often isn't that difficult. You might need to go to the gym more often. You might need to eat cleaner. You might need to get more fitness. You might need to work on your endurance. If the people in your life aren't necessarily serving you at a high level, maybe your standard needs to change in how you serve those people. But again, the beauty is as you change your standards, you will not only see the change, but often the change comes quick. So that was my little takeaway from my conversation as the keynote speaker last week up in Atlanta, which I'm always grateful to be able to have that opportunity to do that, because I'm always learning from the audience of what makes sense to them and what is their challenging points. What are the sticky points that when I say certain things like this, I see them kind of squivel and squirm in their chair. So if it feels a little unsettling to hear that, so be it. All right. With that being said, that's your simple health tip this afternoon. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading the love. And I'll look forward to see you on the next episode of the Health Made Simple show. Y'all be awesome.